cool. So I'm here to talk about math, which has actually always been one of my favorite subjects. And now it's a big chunk of what I do in e-commerce. Just to give you the 30 seconds on me, I'm the founder and CEO of Citrus Lane. We are focused on helping parents discover the best products for their young kids. We have a community, we have a commerce offering, includes a subscription box, add-on box commerce, and an online shop. And I mention that just because a lot of the insights I share are going to come from running that business. And then previous to that, my last role, where I got to work with some of the wonderful people in the audience, is I was at eBay, where I had the privilege to run the shopping categories, except for motors, and to run eBay buyer product. So let's talk about math. So the first thing is definitions, which is never super exciting, but it's worth spending a moment on because there's a lot of muckiness in how people define this. So the very first one to start with is cost of customer acquisition. At the simplest level, this is how much you pay in market to acquire a new customer. So think about, like, to be really simplistic, like how much money you spend in a month in marketing divided by how many customers you acquired. Customer lifetime value gets talked about a lot. And what it is over the time you have a customer, how much he or she spends with you in revenue. And I'm going to come back to this because this is a very interesting number. I'm not sure it's the pivotal number. The next one is contribution margin. Contribution margin, easily defined as variable profit, but it's basically for everything you send out as an e-commerce company, how many dollars do you actually realize after all the variable cost? And the one that I think is actually one of the more profound ones is customer lifetime contribution. And what this does is it takes customer lifetime value, which is revenue, and says, okay, revenue's fine, but how many dollars did I as a company actually realize? And the reason I point this out is you will often hear people talk about customer lifetime value. I think it's actually much more important that you think about customer lifetime contribution. So then there's a few basic rules of thumb in a good e-commerce business. Now, good, there's a difference between pretty and beautiful, but like the high level is there's two basic things you should think about. You should think about ROI, and you should think about payback. And they're interesting, though. I'll tell you all the ways they work together. Not all, some. So ROI is I acquire a customer. How much money in contribution dollars, not revenue, do I get over time? And what you would like in a commerce business, there's some debate. I think 3 times, like you get 3 times in profit dollars what you pay to acquire is a very good bar. Some people would say that's too conservative and it should be closer to 2. And we'll talk about this. A lot of your points of view on ROI and payback are going to influence how much velocity of marketing you'll put into a channel. The second one is payback. And what payback is how long does it take to get the money back? So say I acquire customers for a certain price in market, how long before I realize those profit dollars and get back to neutral, to 0? So the general belief here is if you can pay back in less than a year, you're in good shape. You can be more conservative on that, and I'm going to talk through what conservative and aggressive looks like. So we actually, for instance, we pay back in 4.5 months, which you could argue is fairly conservative. And so then you have a decision whether you want to spend more against ROI. There's 2 other things about this. People will talk a lot about cohorts. And I think the easiest way to define, you may define cohorts differently based on your business. For us, the simplest is to define them monthly, and many businesses that is true. So the way to think about cohorts is, say I attract a set of customers in November of 2012. How do they perform over time? And then if I attract a set of customers in November 2013, are they performing better or worse? And what you want to see is that your cohorts are jumping. That if particularly as an early stage startup, you should be offering more ways for them to spend money with you. So you want to see that the cohorts are more powerful earlier, they start higher, and they have a higher slope, and the slope doesn't decline. That you want to maintain engagement as long as possible. And the final thing is this math is actually quite easy at small numbers. The real question is, can you scale the math? Because when you very start a business, like the seed stage, and you're mostly organic, this can be almost trivial to achieve. The question is, how fast and how hard can you take growth while still maintaining whatever metrics you set, whatever ratios you set? So I'm going to dig into the different pieces of it. So customer acquisition, the simplest is it's total dollars by total customers, but there's some interesting places to get massive leverage. So because if you think about it, it's actually not that simple of an equation. What it really is number of dollars in channel A times customers in channel A, dollars in channel B times customers in channel B. It's the blend of all your channels. And the most powerful channel to make this math magical is organic. And so to the extent you can get more people to come to you without you paying to get them to show up, your whole equation lifts up. The other magical lever is conversion. So if you think about it from a marketing standpoint, you will spend money to drive people to your site. If your site converts at 4%, you have 1 CPA. If it converts at 8%, you have approximately half that CPA. Not exactly, but approximately. And those are two massive levers. So if you're early in the game at your startup, I would just really spend some time seeing if you can nail organic before you turn on paid. And then never stop fighting conversion, like ever. Like if you aren't optimizing all of your flows on mobile, by device, by tablet, by browser, like you're missing a massive opportunity at this moment in time. Like you actually should aim to get your mobile conversion as high as your desktop. Then the other things to think about in customer acquisition is you're reviewing it all the time. Like the patient is always under analysis. So we look at it by every cohort and every channel within a cohort. And we watch how they all perform. And we have tolerances. In addition to our blended payback and ROI, we have tolerances within channel. And then within it, what I would say is really follow where your top buyers come from and your worst. And you will tend to want to exit channels or venues where you get your worst. So people talk a lot about attribution. And attribution is a real thing. Like we have a very healthy organic business. But if I pay more in channel, I also will have a healthier organic business. So you want to understand it, but the way you avoid double dipping is in the end, the final math is the math. Other things to think about, channels change a lot. You should be experimenting all the time. And another thing, and this is a very subtle point, but I think it's really interesting to think about, is your acquisition mix may not be homogeneous. You may choose two kind of different acquisition strategies with different characteristics. You may choose a higher payback, cheaper CPA, and a higher CPA, more cash forward profile and blend them together. And often your acquisition can be something kind of nuanced. It's a little bit like blending wine. So contribution margin. So I think contribution margin is a critical thing because revenue is interesting, but how much money you make is really whether you're a business. And the highest thing, I list a bunch of things that come out of contribution margin. At the highest level, there's the amount of money you take in from the customer. Like they pay you whatever the list price versus whatever you discounted. You can choose to put discounting in either customer acquisition or in contribution. You just have to be in one or the other. But after you take their cash in, you pay for whatever product, whatever your COGS were, you pay it. And then lots of other money goes away. And I think when people are starting, they don't necessarily realize how, these things add up. There's the cost to ship it. There's the cost to pack it. There's the cost to do returns. There's the cost to process credit cards. There's the cost to run CS. And so the net is what you achieve at the bottom. And the reason this is really worth thinking about very early on or even before you start isn't that you need to optimize these numbers early. It's more you need to make sure they will pencil out. Because a lot of money is going to flow out. So if you don't start with a high product margin, you're going to have a hard time pulling enough out at the end. So customer lifetime value. So customer lifetime value is, again, how much they're going to purchase from you over their life. And if you think about it in that way, the highest levers on it is how often they purchase, how much, and for how long. And the reason I think it's interesting to pull these apart is you can learn to take your customer lifetime value up and up and up. So one thing we've done at Citrus Lane is our cohorts are in fact jumping. Like a cohort a year later is worth a lot more, a lot faster, and continues to be so. And it's because we had the realization that we could sell them more. I mean, it's as simple as that, and they continue to stay longer. And so the way, as you think about a business, if you have like a single or small set of things you sell, it's important to remember that the cost to acquire a customer is always going to be the most. So if you can get them to just buy more, your model and your math will get better and better. The other thing I would say about this is there's a very important estimation you're going to have to make, which is how long you think they stay. And if you're in the first couple years of your company's life, you don't actually know yet. You're going to have to guess, like, how long will they stay? And those decisions are going to have a big effect on how you model marketing spend. You should give a lot of thought to your industry. Like, if credit cards will do 5 years, but say you're in the wedding business, like, you probably only got 9 months because people get married and they hopefully are done with it for a while. So what I would say about CLV early is be careful about overestimating and tying spend to something you don't yet know. But at least what I found is CLV often gets bigger and bigger if you have a good product. So check in on it often. So we check in on a detailed level every 3 or 4 months, and we see what's happened to it. And if people like what you sell, it often gets a lot better. So this is something, I guess we're not in the marketing track, but this is very marketing. So I think there's a very fundamental question to ask yourself in an e-commerce business, which is, so let me start with, most e-commerce businesses are not 100% organic. Like, God bless you if you have one. I hope you can scale it. Most e-commerce businesses blend organic with paid. And so you have a set of decisions to make there about how much money you're willing to pay for a customer, and this has a massive influence. So these are not Citrus Lane's numbers. These are just example numbers to make them really easy. So say you sell something for $50 average order value, you make 30% contributions, so you make $15 for every transaction. Then the question becomes, how much are you willing to do payback? So if you're going to be really conservative, you're like, I'm going to pay back in one order. So I'm only willing to spend $15 to acquire a customer. The benefit of this is you will never be upside down. Your first order would cover your cost of acquisition. You're all good. Anything else is gravy. The downside of it is you will be competing with people in market willing to spend more. You will grow slower. You could go to the far extreme and you could say, you know what, I'm guessing people will purchase 4 times a year. I feel comfortable people will purchase 4 times a year, so I'll pay $60 in market. And what will happen is you'll grow faster. It's just that simple. You're putting more, unless you're really bad at marketing. Like, if you put more money, you'll often do better. Now, the question is, if you're early stage and you don't really know if it's true, if it's not true, you have used money that will take you a much longer time to get back. But this decision will have a massive impact on how fast you grow. So it is a decision that you need to pick a framework of what you believe is your payback, but then you need to keep watching the data, because as the data improves, you may wish to spend against it. So the big levers, in terms of customer acquisition, your big levers are truly, the more organic you get, the better. Conversion, the better your site converts traffic, the less you will pay and the more customers you'll have. And then channel mix really matters. Like, you need to have a very nuanced blend of what each channel is worth to you. In order to increase customer lifetime value, I would just think a lot about, can you get them to buy more? Can you get them to buy more frequently? Can you get them to stay longer? And finally, do they love your product? Like, if they don't love your product, they're going to disappear. And then on the contribution margin, we're going to talk about this next, but you can't do everything at once. So this is often a case where people don't over-optimize. My one advice is many startups have died because they pick a product category where they don't start with high enough product margin. Because the stuff that will come out, you can make better over time. And it's even okay to lose money on it at first, but you can theoretically model how good you can get the below the line stuff. So frickin' make sure the top line stuff, you actually can make enough money to start. One thing is you can't know everything at once. I mean, we're, almost like 2 3/4 years old or something. We're like a preschooler. And we'll probably be in preschooler. And like early on, number one thing you need to focus on is just, do people like it? Because all this math falls apart if people don't like it. If people don't like it, you won't have customer lifetime value, you won't have organic, it just will be bad. So number one, just see if people will buy your product. Like, that is the first and foremost thing. And then you probably need to do whatever's unique to you. Does that make sense? Like if you're going to uniquely be in next day shipping, you probably want to figure that out early. Like we, for instance, are a brand platform, so cutting BD deals early was an important proof that our model would work. In the middle, which is where I'd say we still are, we're scaling customer lifetime value. And so I actually think this is more important for most companies than than operational costs. But scaling that, can you get people to stay, buy more, refer more? Like this is actually, once you prove product market fit, what you should spend your bread and butter doing. And like when I look back at what we did last year, we just built more ways for mom to engage and shop. And then I think cost optimization can come quite a lot later. I mean, along the way, we optimized our shipping and credit card costs because those are pretty easy. Mr. Mike gave me good advice along the way. But we haven't optimized fulfillment, right? Because I know what it would mean to optimize fulfillment, but I don't have to do it right this second. It's more important for me to focus on customer lifetime value. Can I get her to buy more? And then, one final thought, cash is king. So if you're a big company, cash may not be the most important thing. If you're a normal startup, cash is everything. And when you look at your budget at scale, like early, like organic, CD point, you won't feel this. But when you're trying to grow the brand, marketing is going to be a big cost for you. So really getting a point of view on how you want to feel about payback and ROI. And you may choose things where ROI is less to get more cash forward. Like you may actively choose to try to be more cash flow positive in period because it just allows you to grow more comfortably. And then, there's a bunch of different kinds of e-commerce startups. Some don't hold inventory, like marketplaces, which is why VCs tend to love them. For startups that hold inventory, it's just something to really watch like a hawk. Many a good startup has died because of bad inventory decisions. Like either they held too much, they held the wrong kind, and seriously, they died. Like real companies, decent revenue, dead. So watch your inventory like hell. I mean, what we do, the box model actually has quite beautiful inventory conditions, but we've done a lot of transactional, and we test and learn our way into inventory positions the same way we would test anything on our site. So we've chosen better to be sold out than to be overexposed. And OpEx and headcount add up too, so watch them, but I'd really pay like crazy attention to marketing and inventory. These are things I like to read. I suggest you read them. And then questions. Am I out of time? Oh, okay. I'm allowed to have questions. Yes?
What tools do you use to track all that information in the beginning when you were,
Yeah. So the question is, what tools do I use? So we're a little funny in that we built all our own technology, like our own subscription system, our own store. I mean, if they want to build their own search, I got to hold them back. But what we use at the highest level, we started with GA and Excel. I'm not above GA and Excel. Like, seriously, you can get a long way with GA and Excel. Then we put in Mixpanel, and then we recut our database and put in BI tools where we now look at our database as the moment a credit card hit us on file, what's the revenue adding per time and how. But it's okay. It took us like a second to get there, like 2 years. GA and Excel will get you a mighty long way. And still your venture associate. That's my other advice. I did to run my analytics.
what are your efforts on mobile and how's that affecting customer lifetime value?
Okay, so the question was, what are your efforts on mobile and how is that affecting customer lifetime value? So mobile as a percent of transactions was 45% 45 days ago. It's now 60%. Which has a massive effect. And it's because we just optimized the gazoozy out of mobile. And we've actually made it so you can shop with your thumb. Like we designed everything mobile first. Right now, Facebook, you should be playing on mobile. Like there's not enough, optimize every single conversion flow by mobile and tablet and device. And then optimize your ad spend in channel by where they send mobile. It's worth a lot of money, actually. So, Yeah, so the question was conversion is important, what matters? And we've done a lot on conversion at Citrus Lane. I luckily got to do quite a lot at eBay. Number one rule of conversion, be fast. And you can never be fast enough. Like be fast and then be faster than that. The other rule is watch it by device at a device and browser level. And then if you don't have a ton of traffic, it's hard to get statistical significance. But go ahead and run A/B, and you don't have to be perfect statistical. You'll still get something out of it, but be fast. I think I'm out. Sorry, he's going to kick me off.
All right, let's hear it from Mauria.